Hello, this is a video lesson on the anatomy of the chest. Let's talk about the hyperstenic versus asthenic patient. First of all, in the hyperstenic patient, the heart is nearly transverse, which is very much horizontal. The lungs are short at the apex, and they're near the clavicle. And third, the diaphragm is very high. Next, on the asthenic patient, we know that the heart is very vertical, which is more straight up and down. The lungs are long and the apex is above the clavicle. And finally, the diaphragm is very low. Those are the extreme patients, the hyperstenic versus the asthenic patient. Now, as far as the thoracic cavity, it contains the lungs and the heart, the organs of the respiratory, cardiovascular, and lymphatic systems, and the inferior portion of the esophagus and the thymus gland. There are three chambers in the thoracic cavity. The pericardial cavity encloses the heart. The right pleural cavity is going to enclose the right lung or cover the right lung, and the left pleural cavity covers the left lung. The mediastinum is a space that's located between the pleural spaces or cavities, and the diaphragm, which is the part that's down here at the bottom, is going to separate the thoracic from the abdominal cavity. Now, the respiratory system encompasses the pharynx, the trachea, the bronchi, and the two lungs. The pharynx is a passage for air and food. So it's important that we know that that's for both for the respiratory system and for the digestive system. It's the musculomembranous tubular structure, approximately 5 inches in length. It's anterior to the vertebra and posterior to the nose, the mouth, and the larynx. And the divisions are named after their locations. So there's the nasopharynx, which is going to be posterior and connected to the nose, the oropharynx, which is going to be connected with the mouth, and the laryngopharynx, which lies posterior to the larynx and is continuous with the esophagus. The trachea is a fibrous muscular tube, has 16 to 20 C-shaped cartilaginous rings. It's 1/2 inch in diameter and 4.5 inches in length. It lies in the midline of the body. It is anterior to the esophagus, which is important. Anterior to the esophagus, so it's in the front of the body, the anterior part. It begins at the level of C6 and extends to the level of T4 or T5, and that's the location of the carina. The carina is also called the tracheal bifurcation, and the carina is a hook-like process on the last tracheal cartilage. It remains open during breathing. The trachea is just for the respiratory system only, and it is filled with air. The bronchi have subdivisions of the bronchial tree. It's like an inverted tree. We have the primary bronchi, in which there are two of them. There's the right and the left. The right one is shorter, wider, and more vertical. There are the secondary bronchi, which there are 3 branches to the right lung, which has 3 lobes. We have 2 branches to the left lung because the left lung has 2 lobes. We have tertiary bronchi, which break down from the secondary. We have bronchioles, which are even smaller yet, and then we have terminal bronchioles, which communicate with the alveolar ducts. It's shown in the picture that's up here at the top on the right-hand side. Now the right main bronchus, like I mentioned before, is shorter and more vertical. Hopefully you can see that in this picture. It's also wider. And so this is a good location for foreign bodies to insert themselves, is going to be in the right main bronchus. The alveoli are referred to as the areas where we have the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen within the walls of those alveoli. The alveolar ducts end in alveolar sacs, and those alveolar sacs are lined with alveoli. Each lung contains millions of alveoli. The lungs are the organs of respiration. So there are 2 lungs. There's a right and a left. They're made up of light, spongy, highly elastic substance called the parenchyma. The superior portion is called the apex. There's an apex on each lung. And then the inferior portion is called the base. And so the base is going to be resting obliquely on the diaphragm. It's lower in the back, in the sides, than in the front, as shown in the pictures. The right lung is about 1 inch shorter than the left, and that's because it's pushed up by the liver. And the right lung is also broader than the left lung as well. The lateral surface of the lungs conforms to the shape of the chest wall. The lungs are going to have lateral margins that descend into the recesses of the parietal pleura, the costophrenic angles, which are at the most inferior outer portion of your lungs. There are 2 costophrenic angles, 1 in each lung. In the mediastinal surface, we have the hilum, which is in the medial portion. It accommodates the bronchi, the pulmonary blood vessels, the lymph vessels, and the nerves. On the inferior mediastinal surface of the lung, there's a concavity called the cardiac notch, and that's for the location of the heart to fit in that area. Now, each lung also, when we talk about this, is enclosed in a double-walled membranous sac called the pleura. When you think about pleura, there's a pleural cavity. You can think of pleural with the second letter begins with an L, goes with lungs. So visceral pleura is the inner layer of the pleural sac that closely adheres to the surface of the lung, shown in the picture here, shown in purple. So that's the visceral pleura. And the parietal pleura is the outer layer of the thoracic wall accompanied by the lung, and that's shown here in red. Now, between the two is the actual pleural cavity, and it has serous fluid inside of it. Each lobe of the lung is divided into lobes by deep fissures. Their oblique fissures divide the lungs into superior and inferior lobes. The right superior lobe is divided further by an even horizontal fissure, creating an even third right middle lobe. So the right lung has a superior lobe, it has a middle lobe, and it has an inferior lobe, where the left lung has a superior lobe and an inferior lobe. The larynx is the organ of voice. So this is an air passage between the pharynx and the trachea. It's about 1.5 inches in length, and it's located between the root of the tongue and in front of the laryngeal pharynx. It's suspended from the hyoid bone. So here's the hyoid bone up here, so it's going to suspend from there. It extends down to the superior margin of C4 to where it's going to join at the trachea at the inferior margin of C6. So it's about 1.5 inches in length. The epiglottis serves as a trap to prevent leakage going into the larynx during swallowing. The thyroid cartilage forms the laryngeal prominence called the Adam's apple, and we also have it guarded superiorly and inferiorly by the epiglottis and laterally and posteriorly by folds of mucous membrane. The mediastinum is the portion of the thoracic cavity between the lungs, so it does not include the lungs. That is not part of it. The structures, there are quite a few of them, include the heart, the great vessels, the trachea, the esophagus, the thymus, the lymphatics, the nerves, the fibrous tissue, and the fat. So it's everything except the lungs. And notice even in this picture, they removed the lungs to show you. Additionally, I went ahead and added an additional image showing the parts in color that are all of the structures of the mediastinum. The neck is then divided into anterior and posterior portions. The anterior portion is the thyroid gland, the parathyroid glands, and the larger part of the submandibular glands, and just looking at the different parts here. So the thyroid gland has 2 lateral lobes that's going to be connected by the lower thirds by a median portion called the isthmus. The isthmus lies in the upper part of the trachea and lobes lie at the sides. It's about 2 inches long, 1.5 inches in width, and 3/4 of an inch thick. It extends from the lower edge of the thyroid cartilage to the level of T1. The function is hormones and metabolizing iodine. So it's going to secrete hormones for metabolism, digestion, development, and cardiovascular health. It metabolizes iodine. Parathyroid glands are small ovoid bodies, two on each side, superior and inferior. It's situated one on either side of the posterior aspect of the thyroid gland, and they secrete hormones for controlling blood chemistry. The thymus gland is the last part, and that is the two thyroid-shaped lobes that lie in the lower neck and the superior mediastinum, the anterior to the trachea, and the great vessels of the heart, and posterior to the manubrium. In this image here, we can see that this is a picture of the thymus gland that I'm circling in this picture. It's very small in the adult. It reaches maximum size at puberty, and then it atrophies until it nearly disappears. So it's responsible for producing the hormone thymosin, which plays a crucial role in the development and maturation of the immune system. And then here is an image of a chest x-ray with a child with an enlarged mediastinal enlargement caused by hypertrophy of the thymus gland in both the PA and the lateral projections. Thank you very much. Have a great day.